It's one of the reasons that Buddy and I started GTP Keeper Radio back in 2014. It was dispel some of the myths about tree pythons, and some of those myths are well deserved. You buy an imported adult biak from a show, and you're going to get exactly what you think you're going to get from that animal. But there are other avenues to go, and these things can be as easy to keep as a ball python. Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I'm a big supporter, especially if it's going to be your first green tree python, to buy a U.S. captive-bred animal from a reliable source. You know, some people don't like to talk about price because price can be, kind of a difficult thing, uncomfortable thing to talk about. But the bottom line is, you got to have about $1,000, to spend on a well-established baby chondro from a reputable source. Now, you can go an imported route and, that are going to be less, not substantially less from what I've seen, on MorphMarket. And there's some reliable imported sources out there. Dan Malari comes to mind. He's got a good reputation. Alex Warren has purchased multiple animals from him. He's had good success. Always NIDO tested, always sexed correctly. But Alex has a lot of experience with green tree pythons. And, it wouldn't be my recommendation for your first go-to.
Now, you can't help but to think that when people get into the reptile world, not everyone, but a lot of good portion of them think about breeding right off the bat. And what would you have to say to somebody buying a green tree python with intentions of breeding them?
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of us, it's just in our blood, right? Like if I was told I could keep something but couldn't breed it, I don't know if I'd keep it. I mean, for me, I get a lot of fulfillment in breeding these things, whether it's ball pythons or carpets or green trees. Right. So I understand people's wanting to get in and do it as soon as possible, because most people that get a green tree, they fall in love with it, right? And so if everything goes well, then of course they're thinking about breeding it. But I'd say you should at least have a year's experience with, keeping an animal successfully before you then, if you want to roll the dice and try breeding after a year, go for it. That's probably for a different episode. But my suggestion would be, in the way that I've had the most success, are get these animals when they're young, raise them up in your environment, and those are the ones that are really going to be star reproducers for you.
Another thing I feel like first-time keepers or just people who are just now getting their feet wet with green tree pythons can't help but get excited about the sex ratio. Like they want to know the sex ratio. Like, is it a male or is it a female?
It's tough. I mean, green tree pythons cannot be safely sexed as hatchlings. Their tail's too fragile, and they're just at high risk for developing tail kink by popping it, certainly, or even probing it, I think. So you just have to be patient. I like to sex my animals when they're about 18 months old. Some people will do it sooner, but the vast majority of my stuff gets sold as unsexed neos. And it's not that big of a deal in the green tree python game as it is like the ball python game, where you have one male breeding potentially 6 or 8 females throughout a season. The green tree world is much smaller, and it's more of a 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 ratio. So if you get 3 animals, in the worst case scenario, you end up with 3 males, things will work themselves out. You'll be able to trade that animal or sell it. And then, you move on to the next, your next animal.